Welcome to The Agenda with me, Lasha Kingsley in Douala, Cameroon. On tonight's edition of the program, we shall be discussing Africa's transformation and youth. And joining us tonight in this edition of the program is Dr. Richard Munang, who is the head of climate or UN climate policy for Africa. And he will be discussing the topic tonight. As you stay put with us, we'll be right back after this jingle break. Dr. Richard Munang, thank you so much for joining me once again on this other edition of The Agenda. We are glad you honored our invitation.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes, today we are talking Africa transformation and youth. My very first question to you is, what do we need to do to change the narrative?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kingsley, for having me on the agenda. My Media Prime, it's always a pleasure to be back. The discussion today is quite very crucial. I will start off with an African proverb, which goes that if the village doesn't embrace a child, that child will burn down the village to kill a worm. And what this actually means in reality is that the young people of Africa today, if they are not taken care of in terms of giving them the right skills and engaging them to be part of Africa's transformational development, they will definitely burn down the continent. And what needs to happen is put context and reality into this aspect. Firstly, Africa is a young continent. As we're speaking today, over 60% of the population, 1.4 billion citizens, are youthful. And when you look at that, every year, 4 million youth are getting into the labor market, but paradoxically, only 3 million jobs are available for them. So you end up having 9 million unemployed youth each and every year. As if that is not enough, the reality is that when COVID hit the continent, then after that, the Ukraine, Russia, the socio-economic challenges have only worsened, plunging more youth into frustration and in a state of apathy, making it so difficult for them to be able to engage. And that is a precedent because in terms of lack of alternatives and getting it prime is potentially the pathway. So recruiting their skills and engaging them to inspire them and make sure that they are part of the solution and not part of the problem is what each and every institution, good state and non-state, needs to play.
So, Doctor, where is the problem coming from? Is it our educational system, or the belief that our educational system is tailored towards civil servant or civil service mentality?
It's the educational system, and it's also the cultural upbringing seems to be losing ground. Let me start with the educational system. Because the educational system have argued quite for a very long time need an education revolution. And what this means is that when you look at the educational system in the continent is still tailored, colonial curriculum, and more so not to address the challenges of the continent. And this mismatch between what is needed to skill and make sure that we have the right tools to address our challenges. It's not what education actually turned at. What is being produced as citizens with certificates who go to look for jobs rather than create jobs. So the educational system needs a serious thing that producing creators and not seekers. Means is, if you look at the continent today, let me just portray a little bit there. It's a continent with over 270 million citizens going to bed free. So the aspect of food insecurity is a key aspect, which means that the education now curriculum is supposed to be tailored in such a way that solutions to address food security become both for each and every student. Those are the opportunities that can be tapped in the entire global value chain, which means that if everyone can to understand production, value addition, to reduce post-harvest losses of tomato being wasted and thrown away, of plantain being because they cannot be added value, enterprises can be created. Now, because of that mismatch, we are now having people with certificates, PhDs, masters, first degrees, etc. without jobs because they're educated. It's important, but it doesn't match the reality. The second aspect is the culture. It is a very important tool that would be leveraged to not only drive solutions, but also ensure that we can use what we knew to bring up to be able to make a difference. Let me give a practical example here. Social media today is an opportunity to be able to learn from people beyond Cameroon, beyond Africa, and actors across the world in Asia, in Latin America, in Europe, and even North America. But if you look at the youth of Africa, all of them using this social media space, they're using these orders that they've never actually made. Instead of learning, and I have to caveat here, it's not all of them. Use these spaces to abuse order, but that's not a culture in which we are brought up. We are brought up to respect one another, to be humble, to listen, to take guidance seriously, at the same time also show diligence.
Okay.
You look at these two aspects of mismatch with cultural values in the situation we find ourselves today becomes clearly visible.
Doctor, is it the policies or the politics which account for what you are narrating?
When policy is made by citizens who later on get into the institution called government, if attitude that they got through school, for example, of getting educated with what doesn't match what to be fixed, will be automatically because they're in government fix this. And it's a question, so the fundamentals are very important. So we need to first of all recognize that there is a fundamental underlying systemic problem that starts from our educational curriculum and then get transmitted to the institutions in which we end up with. And that then means that to have enabling policies in place, the right attitude for people to think and understand that our youth are our strength, they are our asset, and that to give opportunities to them means that we need to have the right policies starting from education, the right policy to revamp education to make sure that we start focusing on not only technical institutions, but also polytechnics, and start to make sure that every common enterprise find solutions for what the country needs. Food systems revamp, ensuring that solutions to food insecurity can be in place, ensuring that our infrastructure that connect farms to market being actually developed by citizens, but by the very institutions that we do have. But when you hear the discussion, when it comes to budget making, it comes to policy making, it's siloed. Education policy doesn't speak to health policy, doesn't speak to environmental policy, doesn't speak to agricultural policy, doesn't speak to industrialization policy. And therefore, this is what we call policy harmonization. There to be a ministry that coordinates all these policies to ensure that they are responsive to the changes that the country faces. If not, we'll have an excellent agricultural policy, but without linkage to energy policy, without linkage to education policy. And so you end up having a mismatch and only duplicating efforts that only result in loss of resources. Not only financial resources, even human resources.
Okay, doctor. Let's now talk about what needs to be done to reverse these problems that you are talking about. I just want to find out from you. You've been moving across so many African countries. The nature of your job has made you to visit, to have visited almost all the countries in the African continent. What do you think can be done sincerely by governments given the issues that we have, what role do you think governments can play in the African continent? Given the issues that we have financial issues, we have corruption, shrinking fiscal space, just to name these few.
Yeah, very important question, Kingsley. The truth is that governments across Africa are doing very well when it comes to policies. I don't think there's any other country or continent that do have excellent policies as African countries do have, including Cameroon. Therefore, it needs to be done. It's well articulated. The mismatch becomes with implementation. And implement. I think I just like our viewers to understand this. The role of government is not implementation. The role of government is to create the enabling environment for citizens to be able to create opportunities for themselves. Once that enabling environment is missing, there is absolutely no way that citizens can be productive. And I say this because the proliferation of policies that do exist in the continent today, without at the same time empowering and actually energizing the citizens to be the implementers of policy, it creates difficulty across the entire African continent, whether from Uganda to Kenya to South Africa to Zambia to Togo to Cameroon to Nigeria. The problem of implementation, the biggest issue. The aspect is that policy making do not engage citizens, and even those who are engaged are not necessarily those who are supposed to be at the forefront. What I mean, Africa is a rural continent, what I call an informal continent. Our brothers and sisters in villages, in Jinkwit, where I come from, or in any town in Cameroon. Most of the economies of the African continent are driven by the informal sector. If you take Cameroon, over 50% of the gross domestic product is actually driven by the informal sector. And that means that any policy that is supposed to be put in place needs to be responsive to their needs. When you look at African countries, no, most of them are not responsive to the need, those who need it. You just give a very practical need. Free community and citizens need finance business. Most of them have already started a business with borrowed money or with support from family and friends. What government is supposed to do is to understand their needs and then use the very structures that belong to them. If you take Njangi structures or East Africa, we call them chamas. Most of these structures are not leveraged to make policy that if there is a budget, for example, the Cameroon budget 2022-2023 was about $12 billion US dollars. Assuming that 0.01% of that budget was just earmarked to support Jangis to then be able to lend to our mothers and brothers and sisters in communities at zero interest rate. Government will move. The policy you will see will be an excellent policy of agro-industrialization, really an excellent, but without the enabling drive to help the very citizens who are the custodians of development and implementation be able to have the means to do so. So, to answer your question very practically is, Africa is a leader when it comes to policy, climate policy, energy policy, cultural policy, environment policy. The policies are not aligned with times, and even when they are aligned, those to implement it and never factor in be the drivers of that.
The youth, there's this other phenomenon of youths always complaining, asking what their countries have not done for them, or their countries were supposed to do more for them. Do you really think that this enabling environment is there for these youths who are complaining? Are they just lazy, or the environment, the enabling environment is not there?
I think African youth are the most creative youth that I've ever seen in my entire life, to be very honest, after traversing the entire world. Of course, there are creative youth in other parts of the world, and their governments have put enabling environment. They do have their own complaints as well. But the African youth are energetic, they are creative, entrepreneurial, and passionate. But there are also a fraction of these youth, whom I call hardened youth, that influence the energetic, passionate youth to follow them for wrong reasons. So we need to always make sure that that little percentage of about 2% have huge influence, using social media to drive narrative that sweat, drain, and create negative energy and influence negatively. It's one. And we cannot use that 2% to say that African youth are lazy. They're not. They're very energetic and passionate. Missing with African youth has been lack of role models. There are several models. I'm talking about people who can stick to that, no pain, no gain. And that you must be able in this competitive space that we are in called the global village, whereby today a product that is produced in Ghana can be sold in Cameroon, what is produced in Cameroon can be sold in South Africa. Because of the Africa Continental Free Trade, it means that you are not competitive. If you don't endure short-term pain for long-term gain and think that you will only wait for government to do it for you, government is also waiting for you to do it. And as JFK, the American president once said, it's not what your country has done for you, it's what you've done for your country. And I will rephrase that and say, it's not what anybody is doing for you, it's what you are doing for others. Because Martin Luther King said, life's most urgent is, are you doing for others? And every question as people, what are we doing for others? The space we are in, whether we're a carpenter, a bricklayer, a journalist, a climate scientist, an environmentalist, in that space, once you use it to inspire other people to see value in and self-belief. Because this point of self-belief is what it is lacking in most of the youth. Not because they're willing to do something, but because they have been told that sometimes your government will work for you. But the truth is that the government might not work for them in the long run because the government is also waiting for them. Try to demand absolutely. But at the end of the day, African youth need inspiration more than any other thing. Inspiration is not just motivational to them, but inspiration by showing them that it can work. If you learn a skill just to turn waste that is litter in communities, whether it is agricultural waste or it is waste from households, turn it to fertilizer or to gas, you can tap into $7 industry. If you take Cameroon, for example, over 7,000 Cameroonians die because of inundation. Because they depend on charcoal, cutting down trees that are costing not only the country, but also contributing emissions. If the trend to turn cultural waste like see Nigeria, Uganda, even Cameroon, those pockets of youth, they will be tapping into a 12 billion to 20 billion industry across Africa. So I think these opportunities, engagement, and articulating reality with the youth and demarcating the rule of government and the rule of the citizen is not happening at a faster rate, and therefore the youth become apathetic, and then the narrative by the two youth that the government is not working for you, we are suffering here, we need to leave, comes the mainstream, straight negative energy.
Okay, Doctor, now that was what governments can do for the youth. Now, what about the youth themselves? What can they do for themselves?
Yes, I think let me articulate a bit on what government can do before I answer.
Yes.
We have already thought a bit of it, is there needs to be a revamping of the educational policy in every country, focus creating enterprising opportunities and leveraging solutions in empowerment, like I've mentioned, from West to world, by training and enhancing entrepreneurial institutions, making sure that those who are not in government be able to access financing, and government should use the little money they have to use charities and cooperatives to channel that money, getting you already doing something. It should happen, and it's the best way to engage and to have them have access to it. On the youth side, the young people should be able to use soft powers. There is profound power leveraging soft spaces and communicating solutions. The world today is such that if that one comes from Cameroon doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot get an opportunity out of Cameroon and still be in Cameroon and compete. The social media space, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, everybody having those spaces should know what do you write there. It's not just about complaining about your government. Showcase what you're doing in space, whether it is showing or it is you are making, or it is burgers that you are making from fish, or it is singing. Sell your talent. The second aspect is that what the youth should do build value. And I've argued this and I've written about this. It is not taking photos with dignitaries or high-profile people that matters. It is about you building value, because anytime you open your mouth, you are not only opening your mouth to speak to the person in front of you, you open it to the world. And what you say can make a difference. And that difference will only come if you are bringing value. And what is value? What you can solve a problem. The third aspect is skills tooling. It's not where we come from, or what we do, or the degrees we have, or where we work. It is being able to continuously learn and learn new things. Like we're talking today, there is artificial intelligence, machine learning. There are a lot of tools there that young people should be able to learn, because in the coming years, a lot of people will be displaced because robotics are going to take the center stage. Robots will take the role some of us are doing today. That means if one doesn't upgrade his or her skill, it's what the young people should do, not using social media spaces to abuse people or just to click like and tell how one is well dressed. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to say the reality is they must retool their skills. The last aspect, which I think is very, very important, is they are going to fail. The problem that I've seen with African youth especially, is that they are afraid of failure. And this is as a result also of our upbringing, that when we fail, we are chastised. When you take a part that is not between 1 and over 10, they said you are stupid. And that opportunity are not given, that failure is not, you fail, you learn, and fail forward. But failure, experience, because if you don't fail, you cannot learn, you cannot know, you cannot change. Let them practice to understand that when you try something that is done and fail, it's not a problem. They need to cultivate that attitude, understanding that they must try. And the last but not least is they must avail themselves. I have organized meetings to youth most of the time, and many across the continent do. And like the program, the agenda that run Kingsley, how many people watch it and pick what is there? They don't avail themselves. Most of them do not show up. So my point is, show. If you not show, you will not learn. Avail yourself, because your biggest ability is your availability. Without availing yourself to learn, you will lose opportunities, you will lose information, and at the end of the day, you will die.
Okay, Doctor, my one last question to you. After everything, all the problems, the natural resources that we have, everything that we have, can we Africans ever see light at the end of the tunnel? Is it possible?
Actually, Africa is already seeing light at the end of the tunnel. But what is the problem is that we focus on the 0.1% rather than on the 99.99% of opportunities. And because we focus on 0.1% of the challenges we face, without focusing on the 99.99% of the opportunities that are in the challenges, it then overshadows and drains us as if there is no progress. That 2023 is different from the Africa of the 60s. The Africa of 2023 is different from the Africa of the 90s, the 80s. It means there has been progress. But is that progress enough? No. Is that progress moving at faster pace? No. What does this tell us? We can only make progress by appreciating the progress made and identifying the gaps and moving. So seeing light at the end of the tunnel is near, but seeing it as fast as we're supposed to do means that we must be able to address three things. Our youth must become the key pillars of development. They must be inspired. They must be given the tools. And one of the tools is right education that is fit for purpose. The second is to start appreciating them and never ever use a sentence with youth, it's a problem in it, because then it only makes them harden. And the last aspect is development is not done to do development for themselves. Therefore, Africans, either they're young in terms of age or young at heart, must all understand that without leveraging on the youth as a strength, regardless of the amount of money that can come to the continent, there will not be people who can implement. And therefore, using and leveraging youth and appreciating them, training them, and help us turn challenges to opportunities, which is what is needed at the moment.
Most of these youths who are well trained, some of them decide to stay abroad and they don't come back to develop the continent. And that's a very big problem with the huge natural resources that we got. Other people are exploiting it. And those that have managed to have the education, they stay abroad and continue to develop other continents.
Right? You don't need to be in Cameroon or in Nigeria or in Kenya to change your. With social media today and with the high information communication technology, we can be able to initiate processes wherever we are. Firstly, for example, guiding youth in Cameroon to turn agricultural waste fuel briquette. I'm guiding people in Cameroon to develop solar dryers in the north, in Yaoundé, in Bafoussam, to be able to reduce post-harvest losses. I am not present there. The point I'm trying to make is that every Cameroonian and every African should be able to use their expertise wherever they are, increase those in the country, be able to support the country and support the state and support non-state with their knowledge. So to reach home, that's really a solution. Because if you are where you are and you are not supporting your country, there is no guarantee that when you return there, you will do anything. And therefore, my advice to our brothers and sisters who are abroad, wherever they are, and doing the good work they are doing, should be to start engaging back home with the right tools, start providing knowledge. It's not only money, providing knowledge to those actors, especially to the youth groups and communities, to start embracing solutions to the challenges they can face. If you organize a Zoom meeting and talk to 100 youth in Cameroon and give them ideas, tell you Cameroonian youth are very entrepreneurial, apart from the few that say that it's nothing but to see that in a month or two, those youth will pick up those ideas and start doing something. So my suggestion is using social media, using spaces like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Let's start to engage our followers, which country they are from, and start teaching them. Actually, I wrote a master class. Class is very simple, teaching young people how to be able to challenge communities in a place. And sometimes I see all 5,000 of them talking into engage in this. So it's not about where we were born that we can make a difference. It's about using what we have, then disseminate it and engage those who are willing what we can.
Yes, Doctor, your last message to the youths in the African continent, because our time is up, we are getting out of time. Your last message, what is your message to the young person in Africa today?
The youth of Africa today are actually living in an opportune moment. Call it an opportune moment because they can be able to engage others, which in the 90s and in the early 2000s we never had the opportunity to do. The phone in your hand is an opportunity for you to engage the entire world. The internet bundles that you get, use those bundles to learn, to YouTube, and be able to follow your passion and learn if it is sewing. Learn design and bring in novel aspects into it. If it is singing, sing about social challenges we face, and at the same time highlight what can be done. If it is writing, write about solutions that do happen on the continent. So, what you have, because it's only by using what you don't have, it can be able to move you forward. And understand that success is not material. It's about you touching lives. And leveraging on that, you can be able to move forward. Because at the end of the day, what we get at the end is what we sacrificed. And that takes pain, because short-term pain will always be long-term gain. And be focused and be humble, and at the same time, don't complain. Showcase what you've done. Those communicate with anywhere, whether they're in government or they're not in government or they're in private sector, always showcase solutions. Because people do not like to associate with what I call trouble asset. When you complain, you are a trouble asset. I do not tell you. But when you complain, automatically you are muddy your way. Discuss solutions, show gaps, and indicate what you can do. That way you will face opportunities and tap into more opportunities beyond your own country and even the world.
Dr. Richard Munang, environmental scientist, head of UN Climate Policy for Africa. Thank you so much for taking our time to talk to My Media Prime Television.
Thank you very much, Kingsley, for having me. It was a pleasure.
you.